California near bankruptcy again, the world's 8th largest economy, and desperate times call for desperate measures. On the verge of sending out IOUs to its creditors, to students, to state employees, and so on, because the state simply cannot pay its bills. Democrats say they can balance the $24 billion budget shortfall by adding $2 billion in new taxes, or at least they say that'll get them started. But Governor Schwarzenegger will not go there, does not want to raise taxes. So what the heck happens now? Republican Congressman Dan Lungren from California is our guest. Congressman, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What a mess. I mean, our viewers have been keeping up on your state's financial woes, and I don't remember them getting a lot worse than this. We saw the IOUs sent out to the taxpayers when tax refunds were due, saying, sorry, we don't have the money in our coffers. Here's an IOU. By the way, you won't be getting interest on it. And now we find out state employees aren't going to get paid. College tuition checks that the state pays aren't going to get paid. Welfare is going to be eliminated. All of this under the governor's plan. Do you support it?
Well, here's the problem. I mean, we went through this is about as bad as it's ever been in my lifetime. But I recall when I was Attorney General and Pete Wilson was governor back in the early 90s, we went through a similar thing, although not as severe. And we had a long period of time where the governor and the legislature could not reach agreement. And there were IOUs that went out at that time. It is the drastic measure that is sometimes absolutely necessary when anything else will not work. The problem is, in California, we are now sort of the precursors of where the federal government's going. Unless we get control of spending and unless we understand that you can't just continue to tax your way out of these problems. We're already one of the highest tax states in the country in terms of overall tax impact on individuals. Our sales tax is high. We've had a surtax on the highest income folks. We've seen a drop in the amount of money that comes into the state coffers as a result of that because people can leave the state. They can transfer what they're doing to another location. And I hope that the people around the country understand we could be in this same situation with respect to our federal government unless we get our spending under control.
All right, but let me ask you this, because one of the problems one of the reasons California got in this pickle, as you point out, is taxes. It's so dependent on personal income taxes. And when people take a hit in these recessionary times, as they have in California and elsewhere, the state's revenues go down because people's revenues go down. However, the Democrats in your state, as I understand it now, are not proposing an income tax hike. They're proposing sales tax hikes on various products, which they think will help close the budget shortfall. Not the whole thing, but part of it. Is there any chance that goes through?
Well, of course, I'm not in the legislature or in the governor's office right now, so I'm looking at it from the outside. But all I can tell you is this. We can go ahead and raise taxes, and we'll see what happens again. We have raised taxes in the past as the way to close budget shortfalls. And what's happened is our spending has always outstripped the revenue that comes in. And when you look at sales tax, it hits those people in the lower incomes worst. I mean, it's called a regressive tax. And so if you look at what's happening in California, then look at what the discussion is in Washington, D.C. right now. We're told by the president, don't worry, it's not going to cost us anything. All these programs, these new ideas are not going to cost a doggone penny. We ought to be honest with the American people and say, yes, these things are going to cost something. You look at the Madoff case that you're talking about, the Stanford case, what's happened there? They were not truthful with the people who were their investors. People expect trust. They expect it with their investment. They expect it with their government. And when we violate that trust, the people have a right to be angry. But the response too often is, okay, we fooled you the last time, we're going to fool you again, and by the way, it's your fault.
Well, and Congressman, let me get this last question in, and I'll give you the final word, and then I got to run. They're wrapping me. And that is, you know, the folks out in California, there seems to be this attitude. It's like an entitlement attitude that they've had for a while, which has gotten them into this mess. And they say, and some would agree, that they need these programs to help college students. That sounds good on paper. Help welfare recipients, the poor, help the elderly, help the blind, help the disabled. Who is against helping these groups? No one. But the problem is you need money in the coffers to do it. California doesn't have it. How do you get the people who are opposing these reforms, the people who want to tax rather than cut, to get over the mental block of pulling aid away from these worthy groups?
You say you have to treat government the same way we treat our families and as individuals. as a father, as a grandfather, I don't think I'm a bad guy if I tell my grandchildren or my children I can't afford to give them something because the money is not there. That is something we all do with our families, we all do with our businesses, and somehow there's been this idea that government is immune from that. It is not. And the sooner we discover that, the sooner we actually act on that, the better off we're going to be. All these are worthy programs out there, but sometimes just as a child asks you for a worthy gift, even an educational gift at Christmas time, and your family can't afford it, you have to make tough decisions.
Right.
There are certain priorities that ought to go first.
Now. Congressman, we lose your satellite window in about 10 seconds, so I'll cut you off before the mean computer does. Thanks so much for being here, Congressman Dan Lungren.
Thank you.
All the best.
Well, a blockbuster story developing